Welcome to Nitpicking Nerds, and today we have some potentially controversial opinions.
We're talking about cards we think are overplayed in Commander.
I'm your host, Joe Cherries.
I'm your host, BZ. This is Amber, and that makes us the Nitpicking Nerds, bringing you, the three of us work together to bring you daily content. That's all we do. If you want to support us, you can just hit subscribe. And that's all I need to sleep at night. But if you want to go further and beyond, you can go to Patreon, and there's a link for that in the description.
Yes, and first things first, before I do the two little shouts, happy birthday to every single human whose birthday is today, and pets. All your pets, happy birthday to the animals that have birthdays today.
You can sell these birthday wishes because this is the first time we've ever wished pets happy birthday on the channel.
It is. It's a first. But if you want to support us by buying Magic cards for yourself, you can go to tcgplay.com. We have an affiliate link in the description below. As long as you start with that link, navigate the site, buy whatever you want, you get the cards, we get some money, and you spend nothing extra.
You get the cards, we get the cash. Also, Dragon Shield, the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good
You
sleeves.
can go to their site and buy sleeves and other product directly from the source. And it helps us out when you do it. Just start with the affiliate link that we put for you in the description. It's so easy to find. It's like a Where's Waldo, but he's the only one on the entire page.
I've been very happy with their shells, and I don't know what they're called, the long deck boxes. They're really cool. Like that hold multiple decks.
The big boys, I think.
Yeah,
With an eye.
The big boy. Yeah, I believe
That's
it
what
is
it's
the
called.
big boy. So, today's video is the most overplayed cards of Commander, and I want to say I went through and I really spent time researching this. I would say these are maybe one or two that I didn't put on here because we've talked about in the past. These are in each color the most overplayed cards in the colors, in my opinion, in BZ's opinion, and honestly, they are really bad, a lot of them.
So, with Commander, obviously, almost every card in Magic, aside from the ones that do absolutely nothing, can go in a strategy and work in a strategy. And there's pretty much a home for everything to some extent. You know, you got to build around some of these pretty hefty, but you can do it. So a lot of these where they fall is like, I'm going to look at what percentage of decks are they played in, and then kind of weigh that against how good is this card? How worth playing is this card? How worth building around is this card? And then we find these ones that ratio just like doesn't match up at all.
Yeah, exactly. So first thing I want to say before we get into the actual cards is I tried to avoid any card that is being played for budget. A card that I think is extremely overplayed if you don't take budget into consideration is something like Disenchant. It's in like 10% of white decks, but I think Disenchant is totally fair for a budget, so I'm going to exclude that. Same thing for CDH card. I think that if we're only talking about regular EDH,
Dispel is overplayed.
Dispel is incredibly overplayed if we're only talking about that commander, but it's all every deck on EDHREC is from budget decks, it's from CDH decks, it's an amalgamation of every deck basically on the internet.
Yeah, so it's one of the only videos where we actually say in the beginning we are taking budget into consideration and we're taking the CDH into consideration.
Yes, we've taken both into consideration and we're going right into this. The first one, it's actually a pair of cards and they're pretty much the exact same card.
Baby.
It is Oblivion Ring and Banishing Light, and they're both in 4% of white decks.
There's a lot of white decks out there. This isn't like, 4 out of 100. This is like thousands and thousands and thousands.
I mean, every one you can always do the math on it. It's one out every time you build 25 white decks, one will have this in it, and that just feels wrong. This card is not good. It doesn't do very much at all. And one of the biggest issues with it is, if you don't know, if I haven't said it, it's 2 and a white for they're both 2 and a white for an enchantment. Enter, exile a non-land permanent. Ones that you don't control. Oh no, it's just exile a non-land permanent.
Until it leaves.
Until this leaves. But that's the big issue is until this leaves. So when you exile it, they can just get their thing back at basically any time.
Why would you want to play removal that can be removed? Most of the time, the benefit is I'm taking out your thing. And it's not I'm taking out your thing. But then if you take out my thing, you get your thing back. Or if I take out your thing that takes out my thing, you get your thing back. It's like, that's not how this works.
So I think in Commander, the honest rate for a answer anything card is 3 mana. This is there. But they're all instants.
Yeah, this is a sorcery speed.
Exactly. That is the huge difference. This is a sorcery speed, and
it's not permanent. It comes back.
It can be countered by a disenchant. It is essentially countered by disenchant.
Yeah, you never want to be able to give them their threat back. That's why we remove it, so they can't get it back. This is a really bad rate, and I think really the only place this could have any home, and I'm really only talking about Oblivion Ring, not even Banishing Light. I'm talking about Gen. That's like the only commander that like actually makes this card playable. And even then, if you don't have Gen, it sucks, so it kind of stinks, but you can respond to the trigger and exile it permanently, or you can kind of like loop it back into play and try to do something with that, but that is like all there is, and that is not 4% of white decks.
No, not even close.
It's not even like 0.5%.
I mean, yeah, it is not. Gen is not even close to 4% of all white decks.
Yeah, there's a lot of other things here, so let's get them out. Let's work in the future to lower those numbers.
I want to say, for white, the numbers are some of the lowest percentages you're going to see, because white I was surprised. People are playing, it seems like, what I would consider the right white cards in the scenario. So that's cool. Next is Mana Tide. This is in 2% of white decks, meaning if you build 50 white decks, you're going to put in 1 Mana Tide? Heck no. I think that, honestly, this is a 0% for me. This is the card that I think if I built, if you could be every single white commander and I had to build a deck around it, there's no way I'm putting this card. I think it's absolutely awful. 4 spikes sees 0 play, and for a good reason. I understand. I get it. You move over in a color. Oh, white gets a counterspell, but this is a bad counterspell. It's not good. You don't get them most of the time.
It's a meme. I think, maybe 1 in 50 decks is a meme deck, but we're talking about like functionality and like power. You can play any card for any reason that has nothing to do with power, but we're talking about Overplayed here. Mana Tithe, not a 2%er card. If you want to play a counterspell in white, I think Warping Wail is pretty good, and I also think Memory Lapse of Certainty, I think it is like playable. You could play that card.
Yeah.
Nefarious Protection's kind of counterspell anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Like this isn't a playable card. I don't think.
No, it's just not even close.
I just don't think you ever want to touch a commander. Just literally steer away from it. 2% is way too high for it.
Only for memes. I don't think anyone would really.
Yeah, we have to. Obviously, we cannot in any way take fun or memes into consideration. That doesn't matter. That cannot be factored in for what we're talking about right now.
How about Secret Rendezvous? That's also in 2% of white decks, and I just have so many problems with this card. They're like, hey, we're trying out a new thing with white card draw, and I mean, I would assume they've stopped because we haven't gotten anything like this since, because the reception was so poor. You draw 3, and target opponent draws 3. They couldn't even give you your card back. You're down a card on this. You give away 3, and you get 3, but you spent 1 to get 3.
Yeah, exactly. That's the biggest issue with this card. This card, I think, has potential and is interesting to at least talk about when it says you draw 3, target opponent draws 2. That is a much more interesting card.
Or you draw 4, they draw 3.
Or you draw 4, they draw 3. Exactly. So it's replacing itself. It actually makes sense, but it doesn't do that. You spend a card to give yourself equal resources. Hell no, that is literally terrible.
Yeah, I just think this doesn't work. I mean, I'm sure people put it in their decks to try it out, but let's get them out of the deck. So it's not gonna. I mean, obviously, I'm not expecting to see an actual change in the percentage, but I think Secret Rendezvous shouldn't really even be on your radar when building a white deck.
Agreed, 100%. So moving on to blue. This is one of the most overplayed cards in the whole entire format.
Look at that number.
It's absurd. It's actually absurd, and it's Brainstorm. And it is in 29% of blue decks. Brainstorm is 1 blue mana, draw 3, put 2 from your hand back on top. If you don't have shuffle effects,
like a lot of them,
this is not a good card. Like, and it's really, really bad. And even when you have shuffle effects, if you don't draw them with it, now you just have a bad card that's bad by itself. We don't need to. In Commander, the card pool is amazing. You don't need cards that need other cards to be good. I mean, it's not bad to always play those cards, but why would you ever play this? It's not like when this goes off in a one-on-one game when you Brainstorm, put 2 lands back, fetch. It feels amazing.
That's a lot more of a percentage gain than when you do it in Commander.
Exactly. You do it in Commander, it's fine. It feels okay, but it's not
good for you.
It's not that good. I think Brainstorm stinks for Commander. I think, is there decks that want this? Yeah, ones that are manipulating the top of their decks. Is
Miracles,
that 29% of decks? Not even close. It's like 1% of decks.
It's 3 in 10. No, I never play this card. I mean, if you're miracling, it's great. If you've got like Yennet and you care what the top card is, also great. If you're just got like some fetch lands in your deck and you're playing blue instants, I'd rather just play a different cantrip and not worry about this. Yeah, it says draw 3, but this is just you're up a card. That's what it is, and you can be up 1 card plus, if you build your deck around this 1 card, that's a 1 mana instant.
Yeah, it's super medium. I honestly, there's no world where I can, if I build 3 blue decks, 1 has Brainstorm, no, not a chance. Never gonna happen. I love doing the math to convert how many decks you have to build before you put on Brainstorming. It's probably 10. I would say maybe at the most.
Yeah.
1 in 10 decks I could play Brainstorm. But
it's similar to how Jace the Mind Sculptor translates so well into competitive or 1v1 competitive tournament formats, and it just doesn't. That card is terrible, I think, in Commander. I think it's like a 0%. I could build 50 decks and not play it and not even question that at all. That's kind of where Brainstorm is, but it's like a mini version because the cost is lower and it's a 1 mana instant.
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Yeah. Next for blue cards, this one is shocking to me. It's the 30th most played blue card in
Of all time.
In all of Commander, the 30th most played blue card is Spark Double. What? This is a clone. This is 3 in a blue, copy a creature or a planeswalker you control, but it's not legendary, so you can copy a legend. This card stinks. One, it is first thing. You know what's in 4% of decks? Sakashima, the exact same card, except it doesn't copy planeswalkers. But who?
I mean, planeswalkers are the worst type. That's not really something we would dispute, right?
Exactly. Who in God's name cares about copying planeswalkers? Not very many people.
You're gonna offend a lot of people with that. I mean, I know it can go in like some Super Friends decks, and it does do that extra loyalty thing. It's really, really, that's like really specific for this Spark Double card, where we're checking all blue decks that have ever been made since this card released. I don't think there's 9% of them that are like, hey, I've got 85 planeswalkers in my deck. As a clone, you lose all versatility because it's only copying your thing. So whatever you're doing already, you're just going to do it again. Kind of similar to in a Blink deck, it's kind of just like you flickered it. It's like you flickered whatever you copied. I don't think this is that efficient. That cost, you're just paying regular clone costs, which we don't like. I think Sakashima, if you're not playing planeswalkers, is just strictly better. So I'm not really sure where the 9% comes from. This isn't even a budget card.
Yeah, I think this card is medium at best. It goes in some decks, but definitely not 9%. This is way overplayed. Just play a different, first thing, if you start with you want a clone, if it's not specifically for your commander, get this out.
Right.
It should not be there. There are a million better clones than this, except for copying your commander. But even then, I'm going to Sakashima first.
I think if you have Spark Double in your deck, where you're not trying to spam your commander, which is the majority of your decks, I think. But so if you're not trying to spam your commander and you're playing Spark Double and not Glasspool Mimic, I would suggest making that change because that is huge power upgrade.
Yeah, and this isn't even a budget card. This is like a $9 card. This is expensive for some reason.
Right, it's not good for budget or CDH, so we're left with the middle decks that are trying to win, but they're not the fastest. And I don't see how this is helping you.
Yeah,
this is not.
I agree completely. What is the next card? For blue? Blue.
I just really, this is like a pet peeve card of mine. It's Aetherize, 3 in a blue, you bounce all attacking creatures, and it's an instant. It's in 6% of blue decks. Someone somewhere, I'm sure, must have called this the budget Cyclonic Rift, but it is so not that at all. For 4 mana, you can only bounce attackers, so this is a spell you have to hold up. You can't play it on your turn. So you hold it up, hope to be attacked by enough things, hope they're not creatures that have powerful ETBs or recastability value, and then you're getting some an okay value. But for 4 mana, bouncing 3, 4, 5, even let's say 17 creatures. Why wouldn't you just pay 1 more mana to get Evacuation, which is bounce all creatures? So if there's 17, it's all 17 of those that are attacking you, and everything else in play to get all your ETBs again if you want. Just have no idea why this one sees any play.
I think there's very few and far. I can see maybe some decks where a Rashmi deck where it's you're really, really defensive and you're always holding up instants.
Like a goofy Goad deck, maybe?
There's probably something there where I'm not saying I want to never see this card, but it's just not a go-to for removal or board wipe or anything.
It doesn't perform well.
What role is this filling? Is this removal? Is this a board wipe? Not really. I just don't know what slot I'm putting this in, and that's why I'm just never touching it. I just don't know what the card does well.
It feels close to a weird fog. It's all right, I'm safe this combat. It's okay, but everybody else has creatures, and they're just going to replay them because it's their turn right now, and you bounce their guys. I don't know. Not a fan. We wouldn't recommend playing it. How about the black cards? Here's an overplayed one.
Yeah, it's Dark Ritual. It's in 17% of all black decks. 1 black, make 3 black mana. Super duper simple. Really, really good ritual. But how good are rituals in Commander? And I think the answer is bad. Pretty bad overall. They can ramp you into some good things. I will say, Dark Ritual is really good in any opening hand. It is going to put you in a good position if it starts in your opening hand. But as you progress in the game, this card gets worse and worse and worse and worse, and to the point that it's basically doing nothing.
Right, you're going to power out a lot of these cards, and so you basically say, hey, I'm 2 for 1-ing myself to get this card out a turn sooner, and then when it goes away or when it dies, if it doesn't get you more than the card value, it's you just lost card advantage. Kind of just, you chose to lose card advantage. It's a very weird thing. I think where Dark Ritual shines is when your commander draws a bunch of cards right away, or is some weird unstoppable thing that you can cast and reliably have every game. For example, Tybalt, the 7-mana planeswalker that can be your commander, that one is one of the exceptions where I'm jamming Dark Ritual because it draws 3 immediately. I can't get 2 for 1. It's not happening. I'm going to get my 3 cards, and I'm going to cast a Planeswalker with like 7 loyalty on like turn 3 with these types of cards.
Exactly, yeah. And there are commanders you want to force out, and it's going to be good in some amount of decks. I just think 17 is way, way too high. I've put this in 1 deck ever, and I've built plenty of black decks. And I don't even look to this card. This isn't a card that I even think about when I'm deck building because I just don't think it fits almost anywhere.
There's also the thing that people are going to say it fits in is dedicated like hard Ritual Storm. I don't think there's a lot of that running around. It might be fine. Like it's probably fine in some weird Kess Storm deck. I'm not going to dispute that. But I don't think that accounts for the full numbers here.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It just does. It seems like it's just kind of thrown into black decks as some sort of staple, and I don't think it's that.
Or because it's cool. It is cool.
It is a cool card, yeah. What do we have after that, BZ?
It's a card that basically performs worse every single time I see it. Is Shield Tread Whispering One. 7 mana, 6/6, Swamp Walk. Every opponent's upkeep, they sacrifice a creature, and then every one of your upkeeps, you reanimate a creature. So if you go one full go around the table, miraculously you untap with a 6/6 that's probably going to smack somebody, and you get a creature back, and they all sacrifice a creature. It's in 6% of black decks. Wow, this card like is just the biggest underperformer I've ever seen in my life. I made the connection. I don't remember when, but somebody played. You had a Shield Red out because he was testing it, and it's cool, cool card. And I was just like, man, Fleshbag Marauder just would have been better than this. Like every single time I see it, I'm like, Fleshbag Marauder would have been better. You got to wait an entire turn. Everyone except the person to your left knows about it and can plan for it. It just starts every sacrifice beyond the first one. I think isn't gonna even get that much value. 1 reanimate, waiting an entire turn for 7 mana. You're not breaking any rules. You're not cheating with that.
Yeah, exactly. This card it's bad. Like I said, I think every variant of Fleshbag Marauder, and there's like 7, is a better card than Shieldred. And that's really sad because Shieldred is really cool.
Right.
And I have it in the deck. Don't get me wrong. For cool factor, I have it in the deck. I am contributing to this 6%, and I will admit that I should not be playing it because we are talking about power here.
Right. Coolness. Play whatever you want. I'm never going to tell you to not play a card because it's
exactly.
Cool.
But yeah, I have this in a deck, and I am contributing to that percentage because of coolness and the fact that I really do like the card. But honestly, I think this card is pretty much garbage. I don't think you should really, if you are looking to make a deck strong, this is like the 20th or 30th best reanimation target or thing to cheat into play in just mono black, and that's really crazy to think about. That's how bad this card is.
Yeah, it's tough. So this one I wanted to talk about when we lowered our power level, but I completely forgot, and it never ended up on the script. Grave Titan. It's a meme on the channel. We freaking hate that card. But the funniest part is that while we were playing this kind of higher power, we were like, Grave Titan, it's like okay if chip damage and combat is where you're at. Then we moved down power levels to where chip damage and combat damage matters a lot. And we're like, dude, I still never want to play this card. I don't want to go anywhere near this card.
So it's a 6/6 with Death Touch. When it enters, it makes 2 zombies, and when it attacks, you get 2 zombies.
For 6.
Yeah, this card is weird, and it's not very good, actually, because it looks good on paper, and it kind of reads well. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, it provides 10 power right away, and then you get 2 more every single turn that it stays on the battlefield. Just doesn't perform that well. Never really does anything good enough, and 6 mana, when you start hitting that really high mana slot, you better perform extremely well because you're competing with
some bangers
and tons of great cards.
Even like Wormcoil Engine, Mikaeus the Unhallowed, you have Junji is another sick one. There's a lot of competition at 5 and 6. It's just vanilla stats. It looks great. It's like this flashy thing. It's the coolest artwork, vibe of a card ever. So play it for that, but don't play it because it makes 2 2/2s. And one of the things we get all the time that I'm going to have to rehash again is that, hey, it combos with Nim Deathmantle and a sack owl. It's like, yeah, if you sack it to like Ashnod's Altar and sack the 2 zombies to make 2 mana, you can go infinite with Nim Deathmantle. But I can tell you also there's 7 other cards that don't cost 6 mana that are basically the same vanilla do-nothings that also combo with it. So I would recommend in that case, take this out for, Sling Gang Lieutenant or Marionette Master, which are automatic wins with that. And then there's Marsh Flitter, Any Number, Weaponcraft Enthusiast cards.
There's a million cards that combo better than this card. This card it's only providing raw stats on the board. And simply put, I do not want just raw stats. 3 bodies is pretty decent, but that's all it is, and there's nothing to do with this. I just honestly don't know where you want this or why you want this.
It's not a zombie. Also very insulting. So we're pretty low on Grave Titan to the point of it being a meme. We're lower on it now.
Yeah, the card is bad.
So
the card,
funny.
I don't even want to play it in combat metas. It's only in 5% of decks. Oh, yeah.
Only.
1 in 20 decks. I'm not putting this in 1 in 20 decks. Not a chance.
Let's go to red cards. How about Red Elemental Blast / Pyroblast? 10%?
So this is 10% of decks. Now, I can start here. It will see play in some CEDH list that aren't playing blue. I think that's very important when you don't.
Yeah, because if you're playing blue, you just have all the blue ones.
Exactly. But there's no way that's 10% of these decks.
Right,
I think
so we're not saying 0. We're saying like, hey, why is this not like 3 or 4?
Exactly. I think 10% says a lot here. That is way too many decks. I honestly just think unless you're metagaming, which we will never take into consideration because it's impossible, this card stinks. I mean, you just don't know what you're going to play against. When we play, me and BZ have he has 9 decks. I have 7 decks. Some of our friends have 3, 4 decks and 2 decks. It's sometimes there's not even blue at the table, period.
Or it's like mono green player, mono white player, Grixis player. How many targets are you going to have for this? When are you going to find your moment? It's really awkward to have a spell that's dead. I think we found that usually when a spell references 2 colors, that's when it's enough to be alive most of the time. Like Veil of Summer is awesome, but this having only 1 color is 20% as opposed to 40. You're not going to hit all the time. It's really weird. I think people have this inclination that blue has counterspells and is really, really good. So if another color can have counterspells, that's also really, really good. It's really card dependent. If red had red counterspell, get that into your deck. Let's go. That card's amazing. But obviously red and white aren't supposed to do that very well, so they do it poorly.
Exactly. You can only interact with only blue cards with this. And that, I'm off. I'm gone. I'm not even close to touching this. I think, yeah, your CEDH deck's hyper powerful, metagame, fine. But 1 in 10 red decks, I will say if I build 100 red decks, I don't know that I'm putting this in more than 1.
Yeah, the opportunity cost is so killer. I mean, I just urge anyone who's trying it out in a mid-range thing, try just a different removal spell or a 2-for-1. That might just perform better.
All right, next, this card sucks. I really think this card is just straight up awful, and you should never touch it because it is. It's real. I mean, it is real bad. You'd have to be on
wheel bad.
You have to be on the tightest budget to play this card. It is Magus of the Wheel, and it costs 2 mana for some stats I don't care.
3/3.
For
three mana.
3 mana for a 3/3, and then you pay 2, sacrifice it. Wheel of Fortune. It means you discard your hand, or everyone discards their hand, and you all draw 7.
6% of red decks. So you're kind of saying when you want to wheel, there's more efficient, instantaneous ways of doing so.
There are
that you don't have to drop this far down. And then when you're not trying to wheel and kill people with draw triggers, you're playing group hug and you're going to lose the game because you give everybody 7 cards.
This is 5 mana. 5 mana to start to do all of it.
Over 2 turns.
Over 2 turns. If you give it haste, it's still a 5 mana wheel. Red doesn't care about creatures that much. It's not. This isn't green. This isn't. This isn't black. And this isn't white. All 3 of those colors have reasons to play creatures. Red doesn't really have that in particular.
It's true.
It doesn't pay them off very well. So why are we throwing this onto a body? It's not worth it. It's not good. It's way overcosted for its effect. Honestly, there's so many better wheels. There's infinity better wheels. I'll take Winds of Change. I'll take whatever I can get over this because this is not good. This is way too much mana. Takes too long. And anytime it's going to be good, they can just kill it.
Yes. So just not a good... it looks like a wheels card, and it kind of just is like an imposter, and it doesn't play it as well as it looks. Because it looks like it plays pretty well, but I would say it's mostly just kind of disappointing. Let's go to Dictate of the Twin Gods, 3% of red decks. It's a damage doubler. There's a lot of damage doublers out there, and I think this one is a problem. It has flash, but it doubles damage to everything and everyone. So you could easily just play this. If somebody takes a giant hit because it has flash, you're going to use it as a spell, basically. Maybe even kill somebody, and then it's like, okay, well... you've got a damage doubler. I'm going to deal damage to you, and you're going to lose the game. This is a weird one.
Yeah. I don't like this card at all. I don't like cards that double damage for everybody. You are one player. So if damage is doubled to every single player at the table, you're one taking double damage, and you're doubling all your opponents who can't hit you. Now, if you're in some control of your opponents, and you know they're going to swing at each other, but you don't. So you have to... there are situations where this card will be good, where you can flash it in, and because of how the board is playing, who's the threat, all of this, it'll make players attack each other and deal extra damage to each other, knock each other out, and you'll end up winning because of it. But I think you can't plan for that situation.
Yeah, it's this is high risk, high reward, for sure. Every other damage doubler is low to medium risk, high reward. Why are we just making more risk? Do we need the 8th or 9th damage doubler in our deck? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the card to play is Fire Emancipation. I mean,
that's the real one.
That card is amazing. Honestly, for that effect, that is where you go. That is what you get right away. And I really don't think that damage doublers, especially when they double damage to everything, are very good.
It's funny. I just thought of this doesn't necessarily have a ton to do with it, but Gold Knight Castigator, the card that doubles damage dealt to you, that's a card people are actively looking to give away. So it's don't give it to yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Just because you have other upside.
Exactly.
It's not necessarily worth it.
Yeah, don't hurt yourself. Go to green, and we got Acidic Slime.
It's been a while.
3 green for a 2/2 with that such when it enters, destroy an artifact, enchantment, or a land.
10%.
10% of all green decks have Acidic Slime, and I'm going to just hope that this is a relic of the past.
I think it is, because you can't delete the old decks. Most people don't. So I think a lot of it is, decks from 2007 where Acidic Slime was a better option. Now I think it is so far phased out from top of the food chain of disenchant creatures.
I mean, it's just, and it's not a budget thing. So this card is extremely cheap.
Right.
Is it that way? No. Rexate, extremely cheap.
Mass
Vandal. Caustic Caterpillar. There's the other sacrifice. There's something else that sacrificed itself to blow them up.
Outland Liberator, the new one from
Outland Liberator. All those cards are under $1, super cheap. So this is not why this is seeing play. The Death Touch body is medium, okay.
Yeah, it matters more in the decks where you're the chip damage combat. But I would hesitate to say that even there, it's pretty mediocre.
Do you think 10% of all
green decks
are Fin decks?
Fin the Fangbearer? No, I would say 0.0001.
Okay, so then I think this is way too highly played.
Yeah, I would say shave off 2-3 mana, and you're gonna feel great about it, and not even have to worry too much about not being able to wasteland. Convert that. Take the land destruction thing and just move it to one of your utility lands.
Put it in the Ghost Quarter.
Right, trade it in a forest for a Ghost Quarter or something.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm off this card. What do we have next?
We got Carpet of Flowers in 8% of green decks. It's a 1-mana enchantment. At the beginning of your main phase, you pick one of the main phases, and you get X mana of any color, where X is the number of islands somebody controls. So once again, we're trying to rely on somebody having one specific type of land and a heavy reliance on the overall color. I've seen people have blue decks and one island, and this card just looks terrible. Obviously, CDH, great. There's going to be islands everywhere, dual lands, regular basics, whatever. That's good. Don't think it amounts to 8% because this is the card is as old as EDHREC, so it's got every green thing ever, and I think 8% is very high. People kind of look to CDH and then just put this in their deck and kind of make a mistake.
So I want to say, I don't know for sure that these aren't mostly CDH decks. I did kind of break my rule for this one because I really do think Carpet of Flowers is a terrible casual card.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't. It really doesn't. Like you said, we had a friend who just had this in the deck, and I had a blue-black deck, a 2-color deck. I had one island to play the whole game.
That's Morphic Pool, Drowned Catacomb, and then it's play Polluted Delta. All right, well, I'm just going to fetch for a swamp.
Exactly. I'm just going to get the swamp here. And it's just, that kind of stuff can happen, and it's just not interesting. And you don't know if you're going to be playing against blue. We already mentioned earlier that we don't want these one-color answers. Yeah, blue is the best color in Commander. Sure, but does that matter? Not really in this case.
Is it the best color? I don't know. It's one of the best colors.
It's up there.
Maybe we can make a video about that.
It's definitely interesting discussing what are the best colors in Commander.
This next one I think can go pretty quick. We've talked about it a few times before, and recently in a short. It's Explosive Veggies. 4 mana, get 2 basics tapped. 7% of green decks. Again, I think it's a relic of the past where this is one of the only options to do that. There are at least 5 strictly better, and I can say that pretty confidently, versions for 4 mana that are the same effect but better. You can either cycle it, you can get non-basic forests. There's 2 of them that do that, and there's another one that does non-basic forests, but they can put them in untapped, or you can go get gates even on a budget. This is just kind of phased out, no longer a commander card. Not that it's unplayable; it's totally fine, but it's just way worse than every other option. You're never going to have to go to play this.
Exactly, and we can't look at the stats and say this is probably a relic of the past. We have to just look at them as if.
Right.
They are all the stats that are right now, that this isn't 7% of decks that are being played right now. Because, we have to look at the stats one way. We don't actually know what percentage of those decks are retired, so we have to assume none of them are retired.
Right, and here's one where we wouldn't even care. Even back then we were saying this card is not very good. It's Merciless Eviction. What does it do, Cherries?
It is 4 black-white. Choose one. Exile all creatures. Exile all artifacts. Exile all enchantments. Or exile all planeswalkers. This card is butts.
15% of white-black decks.
Yeah, white-black decks. Now, it's only white-black decks, so yeah, this percentage gets a little or at least slightly inflated, but it doesn't matter. I think this card is just completely off being playable in Commander anymore. We just have a million better options. There's so many better board wipes. Even if you want Exile, you can just get something like Farewell. I don't know what this card does or gives you that no other card does. Yeah, if you play in a meta where you're always going to play Super Friends, sure, that's the one thing this card does.
I mean, creatures also just do that for free. I think the Planeswalker one kind of flavor texty. The creature one puts you down on mana compared to what you should be getting. I mean, we've always had Tragic Arrogance. We've always had Toxic Deluge for almost a decade now. These cards are just going to replace this, and I'm just never turning to Merciless Eviction anymore. Sorry, buddy. Villainous Wealth, another overplayed one. But this card is freaking cool. It's X Sultai. Steal the top X cards of their deck, basically, and then you play them.
12% of all decks with Sultai and their color identity are playing Villainous Wealth. I want to say, one, I think this card is bad. I think it's cool.
It's a cool factor for sure.
Cool factor for sure, and that might be what's bringing it up, but I think this card is just bad. You just want to do this to your own deck and build in such a way that you can take advantage of your own deck. Now, would I ever play this card? Yeah, I love this card. Super cool.
It's fun.
But it doesn't matter. This card it's just not going to get you there because you can't reliably win with your opponent's cards, and you have to build X up to be a million. If you're doing that, realistically, you should be playing Torment to Hailfire, something along those lines.
Yeah. So when I try to build fun, wacky decks, there's the deck of I'm going to cast Villainous Wealth for 1,000. Mm-hmm. But the deck is make infinite mana. And it's well, you made infinite mana. It doesn't really matter how you win from this point. It doesn't feel like the journey doesn't feel like it matches what your destination is. Okay, I mean, it's if you're going to try to make infinite mana on turn 4 or, whenever you want to make it, why not just win with anything else that's more efficient? Why are you holding us hostage to your jank? It's fine. You can do that. I just don't think it's an efficient card, and I just don't think you need to play it. I mean, comparing this to Genesis Wave is sad for Villainous Wealth, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, Genesis Wave is an amazing card. Villainous Wealth is a bad card.
All right, Fracture. Ooh, a new one.
Fracture is black, white for an instant. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker. Planeswalker is flavor text, so get that out of here. We're destroying an artifact. We're destroying an enchantment. This is Disenchant.
With a black pip.
And it's in 9% of white decks. Just play Disenchant. I mean,
yeah, at that point.
I'm not excited to play Disenchant, but just play Disenchant. This card it's bad. It really is bad. Adding on the Planeswalker is not helpful. That's the worst type of commander. We don't care about that.
Well, if Disenchant is okay, this card is slightly worse than okay. It's just don't, kind of like a PSA, don't ever put Fracture in your deck before Disenchant, if that's where you're at in the removal suite. The fact that it adds Planeswalker, I just think is just not that useful. I mean, even if this card is 1% better than, for Disenchant if you have perfect mana, I just don't think we're ever going to get to the point where this is the next removal spell in the queue. I'm just going to choose everything else over it that we already have. Anguish Unmaking, even D-Spark. There's a bunch of stuff. Kaya's Guile's been pretty sweet too. I don't think Fracture cuts the cheese, and I think try something else.
Yeah, so
maybe I'll be happy with it.
So I think a better way to say it is I said I think Disenchant is fine, but what I meant was Disenchant's a fine budget card. It's still a bad card. Disenchant is a sneaky card that I acknowledge is played because of budget.
Yeah.
Fracture is just a bad card that, if it is budget, sure, that's fine and dandy. But I don't know that it is. I think people just think this card is good.
I think adding Planeswalker makes it look flashier. And really, I think people just kind of got to realize, or maybe just we're saying that Planeswalkers are the worst type. It's very easy to dispatch a Planeswalker. I don't think adding it to a card that it removes things is worth very much because they're so easy to tackle.
Wait, that's all the black pip adds? The black pip only adds Planeswalker. I just realized that.
Yeah, that's what the black pip is.
All right, we got 6 more cards. We're moving into Colorless. These are all artifacts here. Chromatic Lantern is in 10% of all decks. This card is not very good, and it costs $10. It is not budget in any world. This would be, I would tell everybody and their mother who's on a budget, if this was 50 cents, to get Chromatic Lantern because it fixes your mana. You don't have to worry about your mana base as much, actually, because of this. But as soon as you're willing to spend $10 on the card, put $10 in your mana base, and it'll fix those problems, and you don't have to play Manalith.
That's three dual lands right there. So one thing to mention about these colorless cards or lands that produce colorless is we're not looking at the percentage of blue decks or red decks or white-black decks. It's every single deck that has ever been released because it can fit into all of them because they have no color identity. So Chromatic Lantern in 10% of like literally all decks that have ever been made since its release, I think it's just even back then it was too high, and I think right now also too high. It really just is Manolith because the whole point is to build a mana base such that you don't really have color troubles. If you're not on a budget, seriously, I think almost every deck has like literally a perfect mana base, and you're going to get color screwed extremely rarely, which is why I had to like go back and I'm like, well, it is harder to cast than Disenchant. So Fracture might not be much noticeably different, but when the black pip doesn't add anything, just play Disenchant because it's the same card basically. So why add a pip when you don't need to? So this is more like your spells are just going to be castable. You don't really have to worry about it. It's not something you need to worry about either anymore if you had that problem before, or in anything but other than budget, where you don't have all the duels.
I mean, this is a card that if you happen to have one and you're on a budget and it's like... It's
like a trade binder deck.
Yeah, a trade binder deck. This is a great trade binder deck card.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. It just doesn't really go anywhere else. When you have the money to put in the decks, I would never suggest spending $10 on Chromatic Lantern. It's not worth it.
The only notable thing it does is produce colors that you can't make for casting spells. Most of the good ones now kind of don't even care about that. So even then, it's phasing out. But there are some older ones that say, hey, cast this card. You got to spend the mana, though.
I like Send Triplets.
Ragavan.
And it works really well with that. Ragavan, it works well with that. It also works really well with any activated abilities of stuff you're going to see. If you're stealing opponent's stuff and it has activated abilities, it also works for that.
Right, but for your deck, I wouldn't bother.
Yeah, agreed. Next is Nevin Rawls Disc. 3% of all decks ever made. I really think this is a really weak card. It's a board wipe. It's basically 5 mana overall, right? I'm not crazy, am I?
No, it's 5 mana overall, 4 and then 1.
Yeah. So I'm not crazy. I thought I was going crazy there for a second. But yeah, you just tap to destroy everything, but it enters tapped, so you have to go a whole way around the table. If this is actually a threat to get rid of stuff, a lot of times it's going to get removed. It just doesn't go in very many decks, and it's going to wipe your stuff every single time.
Unless you make it indestructible. That's where it is. I don't think that makes up for the fact that you have to wait a whole turn because there's plenty of effects that just destroy everything now. While, Hour of Revelation just does it for 3 mana. It's less mana. It's right now. No one gets a chance to respond to it. If I'm trying to kill somebody, I'm trying to kill this Planeswalker, why would I go, look out? I'm just helping them.
A much better version of Nevin Rawls Disc is Oblivion Stone. I mean, Oblivion Stone, you can do the play it and wait thing if you need to, if you're in a position to do that. But you don't have to.
You're holding it up, too. You have A, lets you hold up mana, and B, it's like, I have an option if I don't want to crack. I can put a fate counter on something.
Exactly. It's so much better. And, like, the fact you have to wait a whole turn for this just makes this a lot worse. I'm just not a fan of this card. Really, this is a 0% for me where it's like, I just don't see the reason to go to this card almost ever.
Yeah, even if you're trying to do some Avacyn shenanigans, I think you got better options.
I'll do it in the Avacyn deck because that's cool. Like, it fits the Avacyn deck. I like that. But that's like it.
Cool.
Are 3% of all decks in existence Avacyn decks? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's true. It is funny in Avacyn specifically. I might not be able to resist because it stays in play because it's templated weirdly, so it destroys itself, but it can't.
I mean, I'm already playing an 8 mana bad commander.
Right.
Why am I not going to put in the 4 mana card?
Let's go, baby.
That Wombo combos with it.
All right, last one. Elixir of Immortality. This is really just exists to shuffle your graveyard into your library and you gain 5. 3%er. Whew, that's a lot of percenters. I mean, I think this card gets completely demolished power-wise by Perpetual Timepiece, which lets you choose what to shuffle in and mills you actively because clearly you're worried in some degree about your graveyard. You're not going to mill. That's not happening. It's not possible when you're just drawing and playing normal Magic. So I don't think this is something you need. Every deck doesn't need a mill protection card. So
yeah,
it's like I don't know what this is doing.
I agree with you completely. I don't know what deck actively wants this. When I start my deck building process, where does this end up?
3 mana sorcery.
What do I use this in? Because the only decks that this was like quick on the top, and I was like, oh, Osgir, kind of. It shuffles away your graveyard, so it sucks in Osgir.
Yeah, nope, not
I
that
don't
one.
actually know where you want this card.
Oh, Glissa the Trader. No, shuffles in your graveyard.
Exactly. It's just like it feels like it works with graveyard strategies, but it doesn't. It does the opposite of that. It shuffles them all away. I honestly think you should just avoid this card. I don't know the synergies you're looking for. You want to gain 5 life. But
we got better ways to do that.
Everybody has some ways to use their graveyard, at least a little bit. Even if you're not a graveyard deck. I don't.
If it was like target player, then it's like a little bit of graveyard hate. It's something. This just seems like a brick, like a piece of Magic card that just doesn't have text on it.
Agreed. I agree with you completely.
How about lands? Big boy.
Last but not least, lands. And these are all colorless lands, which means they can be in every single deck. So these percentages are absurd.
Big numbers.
Reliquary Tower. 27% of decks. It taps for a colorless mana, and you have no maximum hand size. It's just not, there's no way 27% of decks are actively going over on hand size a lot. Yeah, it is very low opportunity cost. I will agree on that 100%. And if your deck is going to take advantage of it, it is worth the land slot every single time. This isn't easy. I could see this card being a 10%er. That's a lot. Like, that's a lot of decks, but like, and I would be like, 10%, it's a lot, but I can see it. People might play it a little too much, but not way too much. 27, 1 in 4 decks need a Reliquary Tower? No.
1 in 4 decks ever.
Not in chance in hell. It's not even close. I just keep wanting to say that.
And we just keep saying hell on this episode.
I said hell.
This is now the 5th time, just because we just said it twice. But okay. So Reliquary Tower kind of is a really good card in some decks because if you're drawing, you're drawing a lot of cards, it kind of is weird card draw because once you keep the cards, that would have just been discarded anyway. So it's like giving you access to new cards, kind of. If you're in a heavy blue deck, which is where this mostly sees play, I hope. That's great. Where I think all the sort of like erroneous inclusions of Reliquary Tower come in is like pretty much every non-blue deck that can't draw a bajillion cards all the time. You're going to have 8 cards every once in a while and you're going to get to keep one. Like, not worth it. It's not a color fixer. You could play that instead and make your mana base better or play a utility land. There's some utility cost when you're not doing anything with the hand size. And then there's some decks that actively don't want this card, and if you donated it to them, they would hate you because they wanted this card, like a Reanimator deck, any Marin, Carador, any single deck that has any text on any card in the graveyard, any graveyard synergies at all. I'm off of this because I want them there. I don't need more than 7 cards to win the game. This is EDH. We got bangers.
I've literally seen that too often where they send you in the graveyard deck and it starts with a Reliquary. It's like, no, if you're a graveyard deck, you want to discard. If you go over in hand size, you want to throw stuff in the graveyard. It's like you don't understand your own deck.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to make fun of anybody. I just think it's a mistake, and I would recommend taking it out if you have not a ton of card draw, or you're going to be at 10 cards in your hand.
I actually just put this in a green-white deck because it's Enchantress, and I'm constantly over on
Enchantress is silly on cards. They go crazy.
They do. They draw a lot of cards, so it actually is a decent Enchantress card.
And once you get to 3, 4, 5 colors, it gets way harder to justify this.
Yeah,
also
agreed. So next is Unclaimed Territory. It taps for a Wingding, or it taps when it answers, you choose a creature type, and it taps for any color for that creature. This is first thing. We have a new one that's slightly better. Still don't think it's that great, but this is in 5% of decks.
All decks
overall, which is a lot. I don't think 5. Apparently, 5% of decks are tribal.
But what's our math? What's our new math?
We actually looked up and did the math on how many tribal decks there were on EDHREC, and it's about 190,000. So it's about in 25% of all tribal decks. This does not tap for mana for any of your non-tribe spells. It's just a colorless land in those cases, and I've seen it bite people in the butt over and over and over again.
Continuously. I've never seen this not bite someone in the butt, because it's like, great. What is the highest possible upside of this card? It's like a dual land. All right. Well, if you're in 2 colors, just play a dual land. Any dual land will be strictly better than this card because it can't screw you. And then in the 5-color decks, like, your mana is perfect. I mean, you have so many fetch lands and shocks and stuff. You're just not going to have any trouble with 5, 4, and 3 colors, I don't think. This is just like, I think the fact that it says choose a creature type just kind of gets people excited about it, and it feels like you're helping a tribe. It just kind of reads like you're helping a tribe more, but it really is just like, hey, this land is worse than a basic land. And then with this super tribal synergy, you make it kind of the same as a dual land. And another thing is how many tribal cards you play. Because you mentioned this. You're like, well, it doesn't cast any other spells. Man, I got tribal cats. I got 35 cats in my deck. It's like, all right, well, you got 30 spells this doesn't do anything for.
Oh, it does do something. It does make a colorless.
Well, I'm saying it's like, this doesn't help you cast those spells mana-wise.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
that's half your spells.
It just feels like in every mana base, unless maybe on a budget tribal, maybe.
I might just want to Guildgate. I don't know, but I would consider it.
Like budget tribal, I could see this possibly being a thing, but it's like it still doesn't even feel that good there. I'm just off this guy. It's not that good. At best, it's a dual land for your deck. If you have all creatures, it's a dual land. Then play it. But if you have less than 50 creatures, I'm off this card.
Doesn't even help activated abilities. If you've got creatures that have the repeated like one color, kind of like a Scooz type ability, this doesn't help you for that. You'll feel the burn with that for sure.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I just lose out on one of those activations.
Yeah. So what's the last one? Very last card.
It's only one and it involves math. It's Field of Ruin. It's a land tests for colorless, so low opportunity cost, which is probably where it sees 4% of play and everything in Commander. And it's 2 tap sack, destroy a non-basic land. Then every player goes and finds a basic and puts it into play, which would be untapped because it's a basic land. Now, we talked about a card that I think people compare this to sometimes is with the math is positive, Arcane Denial, and that says basically what's going to happen is you're going to break even and the other player is going to go up a card. So the table is only +1, whereas if you were to cast Counterspell, you are both -1, you and the person you interacted with. Field of Ruin makes sure that you don't go down a land, like with Ghost Quarter or Strip Mine, so you are even and the other person is even. But the other 2 people are +1, so it's not the same math. It's +2, and there's another difference too.
Yeah, this card's so bad. I don't really understand why you would want to be playing this. Ramping 2 players at the table for free when you can just play Ghost Quarter, Strip Mine, Wasteland, Tectonic Edge. Those are just examples of the top of it. There's other ones that also destroy lands. I don't want this at all. I just don't want to be wrapping my opponents.
It's different than drawing cards.
Yes. I don't want to be wrapping my opponents. It's not worth it to destroy a land. There's just so many better versions of this that are going to do it without giving out free lands.
Well, when you talk about the math, the thing that I was alluding to, when you talk about the math, you're not down a land. It's like, yeah, that is kind of pretty sweet. But the fact, but lands are worth a different amount than cards in hand. Drawing a card is not the same as putting a land into play. If you just create a land token versus draw a card, it's just a lot different. I don't think you can compare this directly to Arcane Denial. Ramping 2 people is going to bite you in the butt. It's not 1 mana. It's not like give them a treasure. That would be different. This is like, hey, for the rest of the game, that land's going to produce mana and help them cast spells and churn out threats over and over versus this is a card. It can only do so much. It's 1 card.
Yeah, I just moved on from that because I figured they got it already.
Well, Field of Ruin, we think it's overplayed, but that's the last one we have.
Yeah, that is. And that is our video. Special shout outs to every single one of our patrons. Love you as much as I can without making you uncomfortable. I don't know why I said I can. We love you as much as we can.
Love you
without making you uncomfortable.
Yes, we'll never do that. But
we're like parents.
We will plug our TCG Player affiliate link in the description where you can go buy cards that you were going to buy anyway because we need to keep having packages arrive to our house so we can get some serotonin. So when you do that, we get a kickback on the order, but you don't spend anything to give us money. It's just normal price for you.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate that very much. You can also do the same with DragonShield.com. Go there with the EU or US.
The EU.
The EU or US links in the description below. Click either one of those depending on where you live. Buy the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
Buy some deck boxes. Buy some playmats. Buy it all. And then tell us how awesome it is. And we also get a kickback on that. And we appreciate that.
So, random tidbit at the end of the video about our lives. Amber, the cat you saw in the beginning of the video, is my cat, and she's going to be 10 years old this year, coming up July 31st. I had to just check when her birthday was. I feel like we could celebrate on the channel because we're so big on birthdays.
Yeah, we will definitely wish Amber a happy birthday.
Some kind of special birthday video. I don't know if it falls on a weekday or a weekend, but we can do some. If it's like a short day, we can do something stupid with cats, some kind of nonsense.
Yeah, we could do something. I mean, we'll see. I mean, We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. She's meowing outside the door right now.
She wants cuddles, and we got to go give it to her.
No, we don't, but we will. Peace out, Tribe Scouts.